The Lone Cowboy and the Apache Girl, a prairie tale of healing. The sun rose slowly over the prairie of New Terra, spilling golden light across the tall grass. The horizon seemed endless, a soft wave of green and gold stretching as far as anyone could see. The wind carried the sweet smell of wildflowers and the faint hum of distant machines that tended the settlements scattered across the land. In this vast expanse, life moved at its own pace, slow and steady, yet full of quiet wonders. A lone figure appeared in the distance, riding a horse unlike any seen on old Earth. Its legs were sleek and mechanical, yet it moved with the grace and power of a living creature. The rider wore a dusty brown duster, frayed at the edges, and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his face. His eyes, sharp and thoughtful, scanned the horizon as he guided his horse toward the nearest settlement, Red Mesa. This was the Lone Cowboy. He carried no gun, though a plasma revolver rested in a leather holster at his side. His mechanical arm glinted in the sunlight, a clever piece of engineering that allowed him to repair machines, lift heavy loads, and even play melodies on the old-world harmonica he kept in his pocket. He was a traveler, a fixer of machines and sometimes of hearts. Red Mesa lay in a shallow valley surrounded by soft hills and clusters of alien flora. Smoke rose from chimneys, carrying the scent of freshly baked bread and roasted nuts. Settlers walked along dirt paths, carrying baskets, tools, or small children. The Lone Cowboy slowed his horse as he approached, tipping his hat to a few curious onlookers. Children ran past, laughing, their small shoes kicking up dust. Some of the older settlers paused to watch the stranger with quiet curiosity. In a place like Red Mesa, travelers were rare, and a man with a mechanical arm and a robotic horse was rarer still. The Lone Cowboy did not stop to introduce himself. Instead, he made his way to the town's central square, where a small marketplace bustled with merchants selling fruits, vegetables, and small devices powered by alien energy sources. While he moved through the marketplace, his attention was drawn to a faint vibration in the air. It was not the wind, nor the hum of the machines. It was something deeper, almost alive, like the prairie itself was trying to speak. He paused, listening carefully, but the feeling faded as quickly as it came. Shaking his head, he continued walking, though a quiet curiosity lingered in his chest. Not far from Red Mesa, hidden among the rolling hills and glowing wildflowers, lived Ayanna. She was known among her people as the one who could hear the land. Her hair, black as midnight, flowed behind her as she moved through the fields, barefoot, feeling the soft vibrations of the soil beneath her feet. Ayanna had grown up learning the old ways, the stories of the land, and the secrets it held. But on New Terra, those stories intertwined with the strange technology left by earlier settlers, creating a world that was both familiar and alien. That morning, Ayanna had been drawn by a vision. The prairie whispered of a disturbance, something small yet significant. A machine, broken and forgotten, had fallen out of balance. Its hum was weak, but enough to catch her attention. She followed the sound, moving swiftly yet gracefully across the hills, her keen eyes scanning for the source. Their meeting was unexpected. A metallic crash echoed from a nearby ridge, startling both of them. The Lone Cowboy had been investigating a malfunctioning weather drone that had tumbled from the sky. Its small frame lay crumpled among the rocks, wires sticking out like tiny snakes. Ayanna arrived just as he was examining it, crouching down to inspect the damage. "You can hear it too," she said softly, her voice carrying over the faint hum of the prairie. The Lone Cowboy looked up, surprised. "Hear what?" he asked. "The land," she replied. "It speaks in ways most people cannot. It told me something was wrong here." He studied her carefully, noting her calm, confident stance and the way she seemed to move as if she were part of the prairie itself. "Machines sometimes cry out too," he said, pointing to the drone. "Not in words, but in sparks and broken circuits. I fixed them." Ayanna nodded. "Then perhaps you and I should work together. The prairie and its machines, both are part of this world. They need care." The Lone Cowboy smiled faintly. He had traveled far, seen many things, and yet few had understood the balance between technology and nature the way she did. "I suppose so," he said. Together they examined the drone. His mechanical arm worked skillfully, reconnecting wires and aligning broken panels, while Ayanna used her unique ability to sense the faint energy of the machine guiding his repairs. Slowly, sparks flew, and the drone's lights blinked back to life. The machine whirred, adjusted its small wings, and floated a few feet above the ground. "It will work for now," the Lone Cowboy said, standing and brushing dust from his coat. Ayanna smiled, her eyes reflecting both wonder and relief. "You have a gentle hand for machines," she said, "and a patient one." He nodded. "Patience is something you learn when you've been on the road a long time, and I've been on the road a very long time." The prairie seemed to sigh around them, the wind brushing against their faces as if acknowledging their work. In that quiet moment, both felt an unusual sense of connection, not just to each other, but to the land itself. "You're new here," Ayanna said after a pause. "Why come to Red Mesa?" The lone cowboy shrugged. "I go where the road takes me. I fix things. Sometimes people. Sometimes machines. And sometimes I just look for a place that feels right." Ayanna tilted her head, curious. "And do you find it?" "Not often," he admitted. "But maybe today?" The day passed quickly. They walked together toward the town, talking quietly about the prairie, its hidden paths, and the strange technology that sometimes appeared as if by magic. Settlers paused to watch the unusual pair, a girl who seemed to understand the world in a way no one else did, and a cowboy who had wandered far and wide with a mechanical horse and a story in every line of his face. As the sun began to set, painting the prairie in shades of orange and purple, the lone cowboy and Ayanna reached the edge of Red Mesa. The town looked different in the soft evening light. Smoke rose lazily from chimneys, and lanterns flickered to life along the dirt paths. Children ran to greet their parents, and a gentle hum of evening activity filled the air. Ayanna stopped and looked out over the prairie. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. "Even after all the machines and the settlers, it is still alive." The lone cowboy followed her gaze, feeling a rare calm settle in his chest. "It is," he agreed. "And maybe, with care, it will stay that way." For a moment, neither spoke. The prairie seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting to see what would come next. And for the first time in many years, the lone cowboy felt that perhaps he was not entirely alone on this strange, wild world. As night fell, the prairie glowed softly under the twin moons of New Terra. The stars sparkled overhead, reflecting in the small streams that cut through the fields. Somewhere in the distance, the repaired weather drone floated lazily, monitoring the skies. The lone cowboy and Ayanna walked side by side back to the settlement, their shadows stretching long and thin across the grass. Tomorrow, the prairie would call them again. Tomorrow, perhaps, new mysteries would arise and new adventures would begin. But for now, under the quiet glow of the moons, the stranger and the girl simply walked, feeling the gentle pulse of the land beneath their feet and the quiet beginnings of a friendship that promised many wonders to come. And so the lone cowboy arrived at Red Mesa, not just as a traveler, but as a part of the land he had come to care for, alongside a girl who could hear the whispers of its heart. The morning sun spilled over the horizon in soft gold and pink, painting the prairie in a gentle glow. Dew clung to the tall grasses, and the faint hum of distant machinery mixed with the natural songs of birds and wind. The lone cowboy and Ayanna walked side by side, their mechanical horse following closely behind, its metal legs glinting in the early light. Ayanna moved lightly, barefoot, her senses tuned to the prairie. Every blade of grass, every ripple in the wind, seemed to tell her a story. She paused, closed her eyes, and let the vibrations of the land flow through her. The lone cowboy watched silently, fascinated by her connection to the world around them. He had traveled across countless planets, repaired countless machines, but he had never met anyone who could listen to the land itself. "Do you always walk like this?" he asked quietly, careful not to disturb the harmony of her movements. Ayanna opened her eyes, a small smile playing at her lips. "The land speaks if you listen. It tells me where water flows, where the soil is strong, where danger hides, not the kind that hurts people, but the kind that upsets balance. Machine storms or changes in the prairie itself." He nodded slowly. "I listen too, in my own way. Machines hum when something is wrong. The land, it hums too, I think. You just hear it better than me." Ayanna tilted her head, thoughtful. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you listen in different ways. You understand the machines. I understand the soil. Together, we can hear more than either of us alone." They walked for hours, moving over soft hills and through valleys filled with wildflowers that shimmered with faint bioluminescence. Tiny streams cut through the prairie, their waters clear and singing over smooth stones. Birds with glass-like wings glinted in the sunlight, their reflections scattering light like tiny stars. The lone cowboy noticed that the prairie seemed alive in a way he had never seen before. Even when machines passed nearby, the grass seemed to sway with purpose, and the wind carried a soft, almost musical tune. It reminded him of the stories settlers told on old Earth about spirits in the land, though he had never believed them. Now, walking beside Ayana, he wondered if perhaps some truths were too subtle to see but too real to ignore. As the sun reached its zenith, they came across a peculiar formation, a circle of stones, arranged in a way that seemed deliberate, though no human hand had shaped it. Tiny holographic projections hovered above the stones, flickering like ghosts. The lone cowboy knelt down to inspect them, brushing his fingers across the smooth surfaces. "These aren't old settlers' work," he said slowly. "These projections, they're ancient technology from before humans arrived. Some kind of warning or map, maybe?" Ayana knelt beside him, closing her eyes and letting the vibrations of the land flow through her. After a few moments, she spoke softly. "The land is trying to tell us where to go. Something is hidden nearby. Something important." Curious, the lone cowboy examined the projections more carefully. Patterns of light formed a path, like tiny rivers running across the stones. "I think you're right," he said. "It's pointing the way." "Shall we follow it?" Ayana smiled. "Yes. But carefully. The prairie has its ways." The path led them deeper into the prairie, where the grass grew taller and the wind whispered more urgently. They crossed small hills and shallow valleys, each turn revealing new wonders, floating crystal formations that shimmered with internal light, tiny holographic butterflies that flitted above the wild flowers, and streams that reflected not just the sky but faint images of past settlers and creatures long gone. Along the way, the lone cowboy taught Ayana small tricks of machinery repair, showing her how to adjust wires and circuits in the drone they had fixed the day before. She listened carefully, her fingers deftly following his instructions, though her eyes always remained aware of the land around them. In return, Ayana taught him how to sense the soil, to notice the subtle changes in vibration and color that revealed the health of the prairie. By mid-afternoon, they reached a hill that overlooked a wide valley. In the distance, a strange structure rose above the grass. A tall, sleek tower, partially covered in vines and glowing softly. It was clear that it was not built by human hands. The lone cowboy squinted at it, curiosity and excitement stirring in his chest. "Is that what the land has been guiding us to?" he asked.
Ayana nodded.
"Yes, that is the place my visions spoke of, an old healing station, built by beings who lived here long before humans arrived. It holds the power to restore balance to the prairie." The lone cowboy whistled softly. "Restoring balance? That's a big job, but I like big jobs." They descended into the valley, careful to follow the projections of light that the stone circle had revealed. The ground here was softer, greener, and full of tiny signs of life, insects that glowed faintly, plants with unusual shapes and colors, and small pools of water reflecting the sky like liquid mirrors. As they approached the tower, they noticed something remarkable. The land itself seemed to welcome them. The grasses parted slightly as they walked, and the wind carried a gentle melody, almost as if the prairie was singing for them. The lone cowboy felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of belonging he had not felt in years of wandering. At the base of the tower they found the entrance, a large doorway of smooth metal, etched with glowing symbols. The symbols pulsed faintly, as if alive, reacting to their presence. Ayana stepped forward, placing her hands on the door. She closed her eyes and whispered softly to the land. The symbols responded, glowing brighter and opening the doorway with a soft hiss. Inside, the tower was filled with light and gentle humming. Strange machines lined the walls, their shapes unlike anything the lone cowboy had ever seen. Some floated in the air, others were embedded in the floor or walls, glowing with soft energy. Panels displayed symbols and patterns, and thin streams of light ran like veins throughout the room. "This is incredible," the lone cowboy said, his eyes wide. "It's a healing station, but also a library, a map, a machine. Almost alive." Ayana nodded, her fingers tracing the glowing patterns. "It listens. It responds. It heals. Not just the land, but the spirit of the prairie, and those who care for it." They spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the station. The lone cowboy examined the machines, understanding some parts but puzzled by others. Ayana placed her hands on the floor and walls, feeling the flow of energy and sensing the history stored within. Together they pieced together the purpose of the station, to restore balance to the land, to cleanse water sources, strengthen the soil, and ensure life could flourish. "This place, it could change everything," the lone cowboy said quietly. "If we can make it work, the prairie will thrive for generations." Ayana smiled. "Yes. And it will teach us too," The prairie teaches all who listen. As evening approached, they set up a small camp near the tower. The prairie glowed in the soft light of twin moons, and the wind carried the gentle song of the land. The lone cowboy built a small fire, careful to leave no trace, while Ayanna continued to sense the vibrations of the tower and the prairie. Sitting together under the stars, they shared stories of their lives. The lone cowboy spoke of distant worlds he had visited, machines he had repaired, and moments of loneliness that traveled with him across every frontier. Ayanna shared her own stories of the prairie, the traditions of her people, and the deep connection she felt to the land. In their shared silence, a quiet understanding grew. They were different, from different worlds, yet their paths had crossed for a reason. They were learning from each other, and from the land, in a way that promised not just adventure, but growth and healing. As the night deepened, the prairie seemed to hum softly around them. Stars reflected in the small streams, and the glow of the tower bathed the valley in gentle light. The lone cowboy and Ayanna sat together, feeling a rare peace, knowing that tomorrow would bring new discoveries and challenges, but also the chance to heal the prairie, and perhaps themselves. And so, as the first part of their journey drew to a close, the whispers of the prairie promised guidance, the healing station awaited their touch, and a friendship rooted in trust and curiosity began to blossom under the vast, endless sky. The first rays of sunlight slipped over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the valley. The prairie shimmered in the early light, and the gentle hum of the distant healing station seemed to blend with the whispering wind. The lone cowboy stretched his mechanical arm, feeling the warmth of the morning sun on his face. Ayanna was already kneeling by the tower, her fingers tracing patterns on the ground as she listened to the subtle vibrations beneath her palms. "This place is amazing," the lone cowboy said softly, stepping closer. "I've seen many machines, many strange worlds, but this feels alive." Ayanna nodded, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the tower. "It is alive, in a way, not like a person, but like the prairie itself. It remembers, it feels, and it responds." They had spent the previous evening exploring the station, learning its purpose. The healing station was designed to restore the prairie's balance, clean water, fertile soil, and even healthier plants and animals. But years of abandonment had left it dormant. Wires were loose, panels flickered, and small energy conduits needed careful adjustment. The lone cowboy knelt beside a panel of glowing circuits. "We need to reconnect these conduits first," he said, examining the thin threads of light that ran like veins throughout the station. "If the energy doesn't flow, nothing else will work." Ayanna crouched beside him, her palms hovering above the circuits. She could feel faint pulses, almost like the station was breathing. "It is waiting," she whispered. "It wants us to understand its language." They worked together through the morning. The lone cowboy adjusted wires, tightened connectors, and repaired small mechanical parts, while Ayanna guided him with her senses. She could feel which parts needed attention, which circuits were too weak, and where the energy flow had been blocked. "It's amazing," he said, wiping a smudge of dust from his arm. "Machines usually just need tools and parts. It's different. It responds to care, to understanding." Ayanna smiled. "That is why it survived. Most who came here didn't listen. They tried to force it to work. The prairie doesn't respond to force. Hours passed, but the two worked in harmony. Occasionally, they'd pause to rest, sitting on smooth stones outside the tower. The lone cowboy would share stories of his travels across New Terra, the floating canyons, glowing forests, and cities built in clouds. Ayanna listened, fascinated, and in return, she told him stories of the prairie and her people's traditions, how they believed that the land remembered everything, every creature, every step, every thought. By midday, a small hum began to fill the tower. Energy flowed through the conduits, lighting the panels and causing streams of light to move along the walls. Tiny holographic projections danced across the floors, images of plants growing, streams flowing, and animals roaming freely. Ayanna's eyes widened. "It's waking up," she whispered. "Do you feel it?" The lone cowboy nodded. "I do. It's like the prairie itself is breathing again." They continued their work, moving deeper into the station. At the heart of the tower was a large chamber with a circular platform covered in glowing symbols. The lone cowboy studied it carefully, noting the intricate patterns. "This is the control hub," he said. "If we can get this fully functional, the whole station will work at once." Ayanna placed her hands on the platform, closing her eyes. She felt waves of energy pulsing through the ground, connecting to the prairie outside. "It's complicated," she said, but it responds to balance. If we work together, we can make it sing again. The next few hours were filled with careful adjustments. The lone cowboy reconnected damaged conduits, polished energy nodes, and aligned floating components, while Aina guided the flow of energy with her knowledge of the land. Sometimes they would pause to watch the station's subtle reactions, lights flickering in harmony, energy streams pulsing in patterns, and small plants within the tower growing stronger. During a quiet moment, the lone cowboy asked, "Aina, do you ever feel lonely, even with all this connection to the prairie?" She looked at him thoughtfully. "Sometimes. The prairie is alive, yes, but it cannot speak like a person. It cannot share laughter or walk beside you on a road. That is why meeting you feels different." He felt a rare warmth in his chest. "I know that feeling. I have traveled far, seen many worlds, fixed many machines, but rarely have I felt understood." Aina smiled gently. "Maybe the prairie led us to each other for that reason, too." By late afternoon, the station began to hum more steadily. The holographic projections grew brighter, showing detailed images of rivers flowing, crops flourishing, and animals thriving. The lone cowboy stepped back, admiring their work. "It's alive. Truly alive. And it's all because we listened and worked with it." Aina knelt beside him, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And it's learning from us as well. We are part of its story now." They decided to test the station. Aina placed her hands on the platform again, focusing on a nearby stream that had been running thin and weak. The station responded immediately. Streams of energy flowed through the ground, and the water in the stream began to rise, clearer and stronger than it had been in years. Fish leapt playfully, and the prairie seemed to sigh in relief. The lone cowboy laughed softly. "Look at that. We did it." Aina smiled, her eyes reflecting the glow of the station. "We did it together. Machines, prairie, and people. Working in balance." As the sun set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, they sat outside the tower, watching the prairie come alive. Flowers glowed faintly, insects hummed, and the wind carried the soft song of flowing water and growing plants. The healing station's work was spreading, restoring balance to the valley. "That was amazing," the lone cowboy said quietly, watching the glow of the tower. "I never thought I would see something like this. Not just a machine, but a living thing." Aina leaned back on her hands, gazing at the sky. "It reminds us that balance is important, not just for the land, but for ourselves. We are part of it too. We need to listen, care, and learn." They spent the evening sharing a simple meal, cooked over a small portable stove, and talking quietly about the future. The lone cowboy realized that, for the first time in many years, he felt a sense of belonging. And Aina felt the same. The prairie had given her guidance, but it was the companionship of the lone cowboy that made the day complete. When night fell, the twin moons of New Terra rose, casting soft silver light over the prairie. The healing station glowed gently, a beacon of hope and renewal. Stars reflected in the streams and rivers, creating a sparkling mirror of the universe above. Aina placed her hand lightly on the lone cowboy's shoulder. "Tomorrow we continue. There is more to learn, more to fix, and more to restore, and the prairie will guide us." He nodded. "I'm ready. This feels like the beginning of something great. Something bigger than any machine I've ever repaired, and I'm glad we're doing it together." They settled down to sleep under the stars, the gentle hum of the healing station blending with the whispers of the prairie. In that quiet moment, both felt the growing bond between them, a bond of trust, respect, and a shared purpose. The lone cowboy thought about the long road he had traveled, the loneliness he had carried, and the countless machines he had fixed. None of them had given him this feeling of being part of something alive, of making a real difference, and of finding someone who understood him. Aina thought about the prairie, her visions, and the stories of her people. She had always known the land was alive, but she had never imagined that its lessons would lead her to a companion like the lone cowboy, a kind, patient, and curious traveler who could both fix machines and listen to the world in ways she respected. And so, as the night deepened, the prairie around them thrummed with quiet life. The healing station pulsed softly, reflecting the stars above and the energy of the land. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new puzzles, and new moments of wonder, but for now, the lone cowboy and Aina rested, knowing that together they were capable of anything the prairie needed. For the first time in years, both felt that the road ahead was not lonely. It was full of possibilities, full of life, and full of friendship, and perhaps, one day, something even more. The morning sun rose over the prairie, painting the valley with shades of gold and green. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of flowers, fresh soil, and water flowing through streams that now ran fuller and clearer than ever. The lone cowboy stretched, feeling the warm sunlight on his mechanical arm, while Ayanna knelt by the edge of a small stream, listening to its happy gurgle as it danced over smooth stones. "The prairie feels alive today," the lone cowboy said quietly, stepping closer. Ayanna smiled, her eyes reflecting the glimmering water. "It is alive, and it thanks us in its own way." Since yesterday, the healing station had begun to show its true power. Streams that had run thin and weak now flowed strong, carrying life to the grasses, flowers, and trees. The soil had begun to regain its richness, and small animals cautiously emerged from hiding places, their movements quick and joyful. Even the faint hum of the wind seemed sweeter, as if it carried a song of balance across the land. The lone cowboy and Ayanna walked together toward the tower. Its glowing panels and softly pulsating lights reflected the sunlight, casting tiny rainbows across the valley. The station seemed to welcome them, the air vibrating gently under their steps. "We did it," he said softly. "The prairie, it's really coming back." Ayanna placed her hand on his shoulder, feeling the warmth and the quiet steadiness of his presence. "We did it together, but it is more than that. The prairie is healing itself, too. It always had the power. It just needed guidance." Inside the tower, the healing station pulsed steadily. Streams of light ran through conduits, floating devices hummed softly, and small plants embedded in the walls grew taller, stronger, and greener. The lone cowboy examined the central hub, noting the smooth flow of energy, perfectly balanced and vibrant. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "All of it. And it works in harmony with the land, not against it." Ayanna knelt beside him, her palms resting on the glowing platform. "Harmony is the key," she said. "Machines can help, but only if we listen, understand, and respect the world around us." Together, they activated the station fully. A gentle hum filled the valley, blending with the natural sounds of the prairie. Holographic projections floated above the platforms, showing streams filling, flowers blooming, and animals moving freely. The lone cowboy watched in awe, feeling a rare satisfaction that went beyond mechanical repair. It was the joy of creating balance and seeing life thrive. Outside, the prairie seemed to respond immediately. Flowers turned toward the sun, water in the streams sparkled, and the air shimmered faintly with energy. Birds flew overhead in graceful patterns, and small creatures emerged from their hiding places to explore the renewed land. The wind carried a gentle melody, soft and uplifting, like a song of gratitude. This is more than I imagined," the lone cowboy said, his voice filled with wonder. Ayanna smiled. "The prairie has always been like this. It just needed someone to help it remember its own strength." They spent the day walking through the valley, observing the changes. The lone cowboy helped small plants along the stream banks, carefully moving stones to allow water to flow freely. Ayanna guided him, showing him the subtle signs of healthy soil and strong roots. They laughed together when a small holographic butterfly landed on his mechanical arm, its wings glowing faintly in the sunlight. By afternoon, settlers from Red Mesa began to arrive, curious about the tower and the revived prairie. They marveled at the flowing streams, the lush grass, and the vibrant plants. Children ran through the fields, their laughter blending with the gentle hum of the restored prairie. The lone cowboy and Ayanna watched quietly, satisfied, knowing they had not only healed the land, but had also given the settlers a renewed connection to it. One of the settlers approached, an elderly woman with kind eyes. "Who did this?" she asked, looking at the valley with wonder. The lone cowboy shrugged humbly. "It was the prairie itself, and a little help from us." Ayanna smiled. "The land speaks to those who listen. We just helped it find its voice again." As evening approached, the two walked to the top of a small hill overlooking the valley. The sky was painted in shades of orange, pink, and purple, reflecting in the streams below. The twin moons of New Terra began to rise, casting soft silver light across the prairie. "Do you think it will stay like this?" the lone cowboy asked. Ayanna looked out across the valley, her fingers lightly brushing the tall grass. "Yes. If we continue to care, and if others listen like we did, the prairie will remain alive. It will grow stronger every day." He nodded, feeling a quiet pride. "I've fixed a lot of machines, Ayanna, but this feels different. This feels right." She turned to him, her eyes bright with understanding. "It is right. And we didn't just heal the prairie. We healed ourselves too. We've learned patience, care, and trust. And I'm glad I wasn't alone." The lone cowboy smiled, a rare warmth spreading across his face. Neither was I. I've traveled far, seen many worlds, but I've never felt this. It's more than adventure. It's more than repair. It's something I can't explain, but I know it matters. They sat together in silence, watching the prairie glow under the light of the moons, stars reflected in the streams, creating a sparkling mirror of the sky above. The gentle hum of the healing station blended with the wind and the soft songs of birds and insects. It was as if the prairie itself was celebrating, singing a quiet melody of gratitude and life. As night deepened, the lone cowboy and Ayanna walked back to the tower. Inside, the healing station pulsed softly, radiating energy in gentle waves. The machines floated and moved in harmony, and the lights shifted in delicate patterns, creating a sense of calm and balance. "Tomorrow," Ayanna said, "we can explore more. There are other parts of the prairie that need attention. Streams, hills, even hidden groves. The prairie never stops teaching." The lone cowboy nodded. "And we never stop learning. I'm ready for whatever comes next. With you in the prairie, I feel like anything is possible." They set up a small camp outside the tower, under the starlit sky. The prairie hummed softly, the streams glimmered, and the wind carried the gentle songs of growing life. The lone cowboy leaned back on a smooth stone, watching Ayanna adjust the glow of the tower's light panels. He realized that, for the first time in years, he felt connected, not just to the land, but to someone who understood him, who shared his purpose, and who cared for the world in ways that went beyond repair. Ayanna glanced at him and smiled. "The prairie will thrive, and so will we, in our own way." He smiled back, feeling a quiet contentment. "Yes, and maybe tomorrow we'll discover even more wonders. The prairie has many stories to tell, and I want to hear them all." As the night deepened, the prairie seemed to hum in agreement. Streams sparkled under the twin moons, flowers glowed faintly, and the healing station pulsed gently, sending waves of energy into the land. The lone cowboy and Ayanna lay under the stars, their hands brushing lightly, their hearts calm and hopeful. In that peaceful moment, the prairie, the healing station, and the two companions were united in harmony. The land was alive, the settlers would continue to care for it, and the lone cowboy and Ayanna had found a connection deeper than friendship, built on trust, curiosity, and shared purpose. The lone cowboy thought about the long road he had traveled, the countless machines he had repaired, and the adventures he had lived. None had given him this feeling of belonging, of balance, and of quiet happiness. Ayanna thought about the prairie, the stories it held, and the healing station that now pulsed with life. She had learned patience, trust, and the importance of guidance. And she had found a companion in the lone cowboy, someone who could understand both machines and the whispers of the land. And so, as the first night of the prairie's rebirth drew to a close, the valley thrummed with quiet life. The healing station glowed softly, streams shimmered under the moons, and the wind carried the prairie's song across the hills. The lone cowboy and Ayanna slept peacefully under the stars, knowing that tomorrow would bring new adventures, new lessons, and the continued harmony of a prairie reborn. The prairie had been healed. The station was alive, and the bond between the lone cowboy and the Apache girl had grown strong, promising a future filled with friendship, discovery, and the quiet joy of a world in balance. And somewhere deep in the glowing grass, the prairie whispered, "Welcome home."